Welcome to Learn Jazz Drums. Today's lesson is a little bit different. I'm just going to break down all the equipment that I use to make these videos because maybe you want to make some videos, or maybe you're just looking to start recording some stuff and you're curious what you would need to get or what is good to get, and hopefully this can be a little bit of help. So first off, I will say that I'm not the expert at any of this. Like, if you're looking to build a totally professional studio, this isn't the video for you. But for my setup here, I'm using a Panasonic Lumix G85, and that's my main camera. I got this one because it can film in 4K, and the kind of standard in the industry is the Panasonic GH4 or the GH5, and a lot of people use that for video stuff, and it's a DSLR that does great video and does 4K, but it's kind of expensive. So I went with the G85 because it seemed like the closest option that was a good deal cheaper, and it had good lens options and everything, and it can do 4K. So that's the main camera that you're seeing me through right there. I was able to pick that camera up, I think, for about $800 or maybe $1,000, but I'll link that in the description below because it's still available and it's a great camera all around. I've had a really great experience with it, and actually right now the way I'm controlling it is through an iPad using Wi-Fi, and you connect to it and I can actually change the focus and change all the lighting settings on my iPad from here. So it's nice that I don't have to go adjust something, take a video, then see how it looks, and then do that whole process. I can actually see live on the iPad on a stream what it looks like. And then up here I have the GoPro Hero 7, and that camera is really nice because it shoots in 4K and it has built-in stabilization, and it's wide angle as well. So this shot overhead of the drums is wide angle, so it doesn't have to be super high up or anything. And it's really small and versatile for all sorts of other stuff. You probably know what a GoPro is, but if you don't, there's some B-roll of it so you can see how big it is. It's really, really small, really, really useful. That's the Hero 7, and they actually make a Hero 8 now, and by the time you're watching this, maybe they have a Hero 9 and a bunch of other ones. But I bought that one because it had some better stabilization compared to the last one, and I figured I might use it for other stuff other than making these videos, so I went ahead and got that one. But they've actually been 4K for a while, and I think it's pretty important that you get one in 4K because you're probably going to end up wanting to zoom your shot a little bit, and if you get one that's only HD and then you zoom it, you're going to start losing quality. And 4K is going to be the future, I think, and right now most people don't have 4K, but in the future it's going to be important that your video is 4K, so it's nice if you start now and just start videoing your stuff in 4K. For example, all these lessons are 4K, even though most people are probably watching them on their iPhone. I'm still filming them in 4K for the future so that they're up there in 4K and they can last. And then every once in a while I use a third shot, and that's just my iPhone, which is an iPhone 11 Pro Max. And I got that one because it has 3 cameras on it, and it's the most expensive one. It's definitely not the camera you should get if you're just trying to get a camera. If you're getting an iPhone and you want to also use it for video stuff, I'd probably get that one because it has the wide angle lens, the normal lens, and the zoom lens, and it's really great. All the cameras are really great on it, and it just provides a lot of options. But in any case, that's what I sometimes use as my third camera. And then I edit all these videos on Final Cut Pro on my Mac, and I have a MacBook Pro, and eventually I'll probably get an iMac or something. But Final Cut Pro is really useful, especially when putting different angles together, because you can actually just sync the clips automatically, and then it'll show up, and you can kind of edit it live, like you're watching through the video, and choose the angles. It's pretty useful. And then on to audio. I'm using Logic Pro 10, also on my MacBook Pro. And then let's look at all the microphones I'm using. So depending on the video, you're probably not actually hearing all of the mics because sometimes I don't actually need to be putting them all in there in the mix, but usually I'm recording with all of these. I have 8 channels running and sometimes even 10. So I have 2 overheads, I have rack tom, floor tom, snare drum top and bottom, bass drum, batter side and resonant side, and then hi-hat. And then sometimes I'll do room mics, but for these videos I usually just do a mic here to pick up my voice. So for my mics, the only brand that I have that is considered like the standard brand is Shure, and I have SM57s, which are the standard snare drum mics. I have those on top and bottom snare. Other than that, I'm using Vanguard mics, which is a company in California, and I actually know the guy who runs the company. It's a super great company, and they're making all this stuff that's very original, and it's definitely competing with all these other companies, big name companies. And then I use Warm Audio, and their concept is totally different. And then I also use SE Electronics as well. So if you're wondering what this box is for, it's for these Vanguard V1 overheads that I'm using. And they don't have to always be overheads. They're great all around mics. But what's really cool about these and why I'm holding the box is it comes with this kit with all these different capsules. So it's a condenser mic, a pencil condenser as you can see, but it comes with 4 different small diaphragm capsules and then 1 large diaphragm capsule. So it comes with 4 of these small diaphragm capsules that are interchangeable on it, and one of them is omnidirectional, then cardioid, which is what I'm using on these, and then you have hypercardioid and wide cardioid. And I'll link to a video below on my personal channel where I actually demonstrated all of the different pickup patterns and how you can hear the difference, especially in a room of this size. And then lastly is the really cool feature of the mic, which is this large diaphragm capsule. So depending on the session, I might end up using this, but it's cool because it has cardioid and then also omnidirectional, which means it's using the capsule on both sides. And it just opens up a lot of options, and it's really cool that this one microphone has all these different capsules and all these different options for it. For me, the majority of the time I'm using them as overheads and they're in cardioid, but I do love having all the options, which is why I specifically bought these mics. And if you don't know what those pickup patterns like omnidirectional and cardioid mean, you can search that on YouTube. There's tons of videos that can teach you about what all of that stuff means. But in any case, those are my overheads, and then on the snare drum I'm using a standard SM57 on top and bottom. And then on the toms I'm using Warm Audio 14s, and these also work great as overheads. I used them as overheads for a while, and they're the Warm Audio 14s. They're kind of modeled after the vintage AKG 414. And the AKG 414 is still made today, but people really like the 70s, I think, version of it. It's this specific version of it that was vintage, and a lot of people seek those today. For some reason, it had this unique sound that they don't make it the same way anymore, and it doesn't have that same sound. And so these Warm Audio mics are trying to emulate that vintage sound. Again, I'll link these below, and they have been great for me. They have a switch to do -10 or -20 dB, and then they can also do omnidirectional figure 8 or just cardioid. And then over here on the hi-hat, I have an SE Electronics SE5, and I think this mic is actually discontinued, but I'll link below for whatever the alternate version is that's good. And then right here, picking up my voice, or sometimes I use these as room mics, I have a pair. These are SE7s, and these are really small condensers that are pretty good, and they're very affordable. Then over on the batter side of the bass drum, I'm using a Shure Beta 52, which is a pretty standard bass drum mic. But I like to use it on the batter side of my bass drum because for jazz, my bass drum's a lot more open, and it kind of gets the actual attack of the beater hitting the bass drum head. And then on the resonant side of my bass drum, I have a Warm Audio 47 Junior, and that's modeled after vintage FET 47 Juniors, which are very popular microphones, and I think it sounds really great on the bass drum. So that's all the microphones that I'm using, and then those are all getting to my computer by way of a Universal Audio Apollo X8P, which is a very expensive interface, and it has 8 channels. And these interfaces are well known because a lot of people think that the plugins on there are almost as good as having outboard gear. So as opposed to buying a preamp that I have to go into a preamp that's $1,000, and then I go from there into an interface and then into my computer, I can just go into the interface. And a lot of people have different opinions about that. For me right now, I'm just using the interface and using the plugins on there that are emulating all these other preamps, but for some people, buying preamps still makes a lot of sense, and eventually I'll probably get there to where I'm buying outboard preamps, but it's just really expensive for me right now. To truly buy great preamps, you're looking at probably like $1,000 a channel. So if I have 8 mics, that's like $8,000 to have outboard preamps. And for me right now, I just don't really need that. So what do you need if you just want to record drums and you don't want to spend a bunch of money? Because all of this stuff, especially that interface and all these mics together, it does add up and end up costing you a lot of money. So what can you do if you just want to record drums simply? For me, I would invest in just a really great overhead mic. So that could be a small diaphragm condenser, large diaphragm condenser, or maybe even a ribbon mic. I don't have any ribbon mics right now, but those can all be really great. And then to start out with, you just get a really good overhead mic to get a really good picture of the whole drum set. And then if you want to add some close mics, SM57s are still the standard. They're $100. I don't hear many people complaining about them other than maybe everyone uses them, so they want to do something different. But these are $100 and they're great, so you could get that on the snare drum, and then maybe something like Beta 52 by Shure or something similar for the bass drum. But usually to start out with, that's probably all you'll need is an overhead, snare drum, bass drum, or you could do 2 overheads, snare drum, bass drum, And then Focusrite makes really great interfaces if you're looking for a cheap interface. So I actually have an 8-channel Focusrite interface that I used to use, and I still use it if I need extra channels for something. But basically, they're very affordable, like $500 to get 8 channels versus $3,500 to get 8 channels or something like that. And you can do all sorts of great stuff with them, especially when you're starting out. I will say, if you're trying to do like professional recording for someone where you're delivering tracks to them and you do it through a Focusrite interface using the Focusrite preamps, they'll probably notice the difference and they won't take you very seriously. But if you're just trying to record drums and trying to put some stuff on YouTube, or even just trying to reference it for yourself, a Focusrite interface is going to get you a long way. They also make 4-channel interfaces that are even cheaper, so maybe to start out you could just get that and then get a snare drum, bass drum, and overhead mic, and you'd have a pretty good setup to start with there. The other option is just to buy a Zoom recorder, which I did an article ranking my favorite Zoom recorders, and you can see that in the link below as well. And those are great because those you just click a button and record. You don't have to have an interface, you don't have to have mics and preamps. It has it all in one thing for you. So if you're just trying to get your own reference recordings or send it to a few people or even post on YouTube, those are really great mics. And then I'm using these fairly affordable video lights right here because in order to get a good shot on video in all conditions, like I don't have to worry about daylight, I need to have these video lights because otherwise the video ends up really grainy, and any camera, no matter how good it is going to be grainy when it's super dark. And then real quick, I'll talk about what I'm actually playing in these videos and then we'll finish it up. So I endorse Vic Firth, Gretsch, Sabian, and Remo, and so I'm using Vic Firth AJ4s most of the time, and then the drums are Gretsch Catalina Club right here, and in my other videos you probably saw I was using Round Badge drums, and I use the round badges and a USA custom kit live most of the time, but this is just what's set up right here, and they're actually really great and they're really affordable, like under $600, so you can see that in the link below as well. And then my cymbals right here are Crescent Hammer Tones, so that's the Jeff Hamilton series of Crescent cymbals made by Sabian. These are actually a little bit older, the ones I have up right here, just because they're what's set up. But then I have a newer set made by Sabian, and I use those live most of the time and in some of these videos. And then right here on this drum set, these are just coated Ambassador. These are the stock heads that come on this Gretsch Catalina kit, but most of the time I use Fiberskin Diplomats. And then for hardware, I don't have it set up right here because this is actually my 3rd set of hardware that's set up because I just want to keep it here to make these videos, but I use a DW6000 pedal, and then other than that I use the DW Ultralight stands, and sometimes I use a Canopus hi-hat stand or I use a DW Ultralight hi-hat stand as well. And those are really great stands. The DW Ultralights are my favorite, and I also have an article where I detail all those, linked in the description below. So I hope that was helpful so that you know all the stuff that I'm using in all these videos, and maybe if you're looking to make some videos or just record yourself, you can see some of the equipment that I'm using. I'm not using the most expensive equipment by any means, you know, like I don't have a Telefunken mic or anything like that. I'm using basically kind of the versions of those mics. People make versions of those mics that are cheaper, and they're supposed to be almost as good. And for my purposes, I think that's really great, and I'm always looking to improve though, so I'm only going to keep expanding and keep ramping up the production quality and stuff. Maybe I'll get another camera that's even nicer, or, you know, I'm even using a nicer lens right now. I got that about a month ago, so I'm 3 or 4 videos into using this new lens, and I think it looks a lot better. So it's just exciting, all this different stuff that you can get to make this stuff. But don't worry about spending $10,000 or something up front. If you just want to start out, get a Focusrite interface and a couple mics, an overhead, or even just get a Zoom recorder, record yourself, take a video with an iPhone. As long as it's well lit, it'll look amazing. As always, I really appreciate you watching this video. Head to learnjazzdrums.co for lots more videos and blog posts and podcast episodes, all related to jazz drumming. And everything I talked about is linked in the description below, so you can check that out as well. And I really appreciate you watching. Thanks so much, and I'll see you on the next video.